Welcome to the first episode of the Daily Discomfort Podcast. I'm your show host, Michael Stone, and today I'm going to be introducing you to the premise of this podcast, what we want to talk about, where we're headed. So the first thing I want to talk to you about today is the mission statement for the podcast. The Daily Discomfort Podcast exists to help men reach their fullest potential, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Hosted by coach and community leader Michael Stone, the podcast explores the various types of discomfort that shape men into leaders of themselves and others, helping them to overcome their fears and challenges, and helping them to cultivate deeper connections with themselves and those around them. From uncomfortable truths about success, mental health, and masculinity, to in-depth explorations of physical fitness, emotional mastery, and spirituality. The podcast will deliver thought-provoking insights, inspiring conversations, practical tools, and honest reflections to help you grow beyond the man you were yesterday. A better father, brother, partner, a better mate, and so on. Whether you're navigating a breakup, training for a marathon, building your business, or simply tired of numbing out with distractions, this is your home for grounded conversations, inspiring stories, and a place you can go when you need to feel a sense of connection to a community that understands you. Finally, in honor of one of the foundational pillars of the podcast, emotional mastery, which relates to mental health, we honor each man, past and present, who has struggled or is struggling with his mental health. We honor any man who lost that battle, and we strive to create a world where all support each other through this struggle with mental health. I'd like to highlight the core pillars of the podcast, what we'll be talking about in future. Firstly, physical fitness. This is the physical pillar of discomfort. Talking about fitness, sport, nutrition, and yoga. Emotional mastery, the emotional pillar. Talking about mental health, loneliness, escapism, toxic habits, breath work, and meditation, making up some of what we would see as the spiritual pillar. On that point, this is never going to be a podcast that pushes any sort of religion. The idea is to give you different perspectives, insights, and also practical tools that you can take away. So with this spiritual pillar, it's more about connecting not only to yourself, but maybe something that you feel could be higher than yourself. That would make up that spiritual component. And I would love to have different people of different faiths and with different spiritual outlooks and perspectives on the podcast in future to discuss that a little bit further. The fourth pillar, community, which regards brotherhood. So for men, this is something that we're trying to build with the Daily Discomfort Run Club, but also some exciting things to come out in future when it comes to taking that community more so online. Finally, something that I'm passionate about discussing is my own viewpoints and insights on modern masculinity with respect to the fact that they are my own. What I see is a polarization of what it means to be a man and even what sort of motivation and push that a lot of us men seek when we're trying to get somewhere in our life. And a lot of the time what gets neglected. I think this is a really important one, and what I am excited about doing in future is viewing different ends of the spectrum through conversations with different people who have achieved high performance in areas of their life but have differing perspectives on masculinity and what it means to be a man. So we can get a better insight, a better perspective. We can use what we need. We can find the tools that we need through that knowledge. Now, touching on three core values within the podcast, they're more so aligned with the direction, not only of what the podcast aims to do, but also where I want to support men with this podcast as well. So the first being inspiring or leading ourselves and others, becoming a better leader of ourselves as a man, but also being able to lead the people around us. Secondly, overcoming fears, challenges, and insecurities. Whatever fears, limiting beliefs are holding you back, whatever challenges that you've been putting off in your life that you need to overcome to grow as a man, and looking at any insecurities, things that you may not actually even realize at this point, but that hold you back. And this is actually going to touch on the perception of masculinity a lot of the time, because I think there's a lot of flaw in traditional outlooks that are governed by underlying insecurities. Finally, creating deep and meaningful conversations. So I guess the concept of that is truly just deeper connection. We can become so emotionally dysregulated and so removed from ourselves and who we are, and we look externally, not only as men, but women as well. One of the issues with this when it pertains to mental health is what we see in the world at this point now. With the majority of issues that we have with mental health is that a lot of men don't understand, they don't feel, they don't know how to articulate their own emotions. So this is about creating a better connection and understanding of yourself, how you feel, why you feel it. And then in knowing that, being able to convey that to other people, but then also being able to create empathy and understand other people as well, so we can create deeper connections with ourselves and to others. So before I go on, I've got a bit of a layout about what I'd like to talk about in today's podcast. Being the introduction episode, there's only so much I can cover. I was putting off getting this episode out because I was trying to perfect it. And this has been something in my life that has held me back a lot. So while this format may change over time, and whilst the idea is that it's not just me talking on the podcast, but I'm actually having a conversation with one or two or potentially more people as this podcast evolves, this is how the podcast layout is usually going to look. I'll introduce you to the aim of the episode. We'll run through a few key concepts or key points. I like to offer you a bit of a takeaway, and at the end of it, even a bit of a closing reflection. So what you could ask yourself potentially based on what we talked about in the podcast episode. So you can actually take away something from each episode and not just use it as another distraction. So the first point I want to discuss in this episode is embracing discomfort to overcome adversity. To create an analogy out of this, think about the last time that you lifted weights in the gym. You had to put a certain amount of stress, load on your body. It had to withstand it. And between the time that you finish training and the next time you go back to the gym, the likely outcome is that you got stronger, or maybe you built some more muscle, so your body could then handle a larger challenge. So when it comes to embracing discomfort in our life, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, however you want to look at it, however you have a framework of what discomfort is, we are basically looking at different stresses, selecting them and not letting life throw them at us, and using them as a tool to help us to overcome other challenges in our life. Not only that, but moving back to the analogy, if you're physically stronger, the weights that you used to do feel a lot lighter. So as you start to embrace more discomfort in your life, and if you adapt to this properly, this means that a lot of those challenges that used to be quite overwhelming are belittled. They're not such a big thing now. I think this is one of the biggest values when we look at daily life for a lot of us now, is that we get overwhelmed by minute things at times, and we lose perception of the bigger picture and what's really going on, and we get knocked down by life. And I feel like we can always build ourselves up to be able to withstand more, to be more resilient. And as I said, this isn't just about physical. If we look at this from an emotional aspect, one thing that we don't do a lot of the time is actually sit there with emotions, feel them, and start to actually become observant of why it's there. Why did that come about? Why am I feeling this? A lot of the time we just feel it and we react. And this is why I don't always think physical discomfort is the way to go to build yourself up as a man. What I've done in the past, when I was emotionally uncomfortable or I was quite stressed out, is use exercise as an escape, just like I used to do with drugs, TV, binging, eating food, whatever it may have been. So looking at that from an emotional aspect, it's actually getting to the point where you can A, identify what that emotion is, B, identify where it's coming from, and then C, just not react to it in an adverse way. You can actually just understand it, feel it, convey it to people around you if you need to discuss it, but also just not beat yourself up for having it. You're a human and it's okay to have emotions. This trickles into the next point of the polarization of masculinity. And when we talk about embracing discomfort, I know, and a lot of you guys listening to it have probably been in the same boat. When it came to building yourself up, building mental toughness and discipline, who were some of the guys that you were listening to? What are some of the things that you're watching? David Goggins, Jocko Willink, some of you guys out there might listen to Andrew Tate. There's a lot of figures out there. Alex Hormozy in the business world. There's a lot of guys out there who just have that angle of relentless action. And I think there's so much value to it. And I'm not saying it doesn't work in the terms of what they identify as success, but I also think it's one of the reasons that we do get issues with mental health at times when you start listening to that and it starts to alienate not only yourself, but other people for having emotions and having their own challenges as well. Don't get me wrong, you've got to choose your environment. You've got to have your standards held relatively high, depending on what sort of outcomes that you want. But I think we just lean into this very, very action-orientated, go, go, go. Don't deal with the problem, just move away from it, run from it, and just hyperfixate on whatever the task at hand is over here. Again, agree with it, think it's a great concept, have found a lot of support, a lot of motivation and inspiration through even listening to someone or reading someone like David Goggins' books, listening to Jocko Willink, Alex Hormozy, these types of characters. On the other end of the spectrum, you then get these guys talking about being vulnerable with your emotions. It could be the same guy that's crying online in a video, telling you to open up all the time. A bunch of guys get together in a men's circle, sit down and just express and open up about their emotions. There's need for it, all right? There's nothing inherently wrong with that. My perspective on it is that we need to find a balance. I can't say I 110% agree with just using this hyper-masculine side of it or this hyper-feminine side of it. I think both sides probably have some things that they need to work on. They both have insecurities. And that's going straight back to myself. Obviously, no, I have my own insecurities with going too far or too far this way. I think what we lose sight of is that there's always this balancing act, and we have a tendency as humans to go to extremes, all in or all out. If you found a lot of pain from any situation or experience in your life, it is very likely that you're going to run the other way. If you've had an experience where you felt very weak as a man, you may tend to look at the other pathway of, I've got to be hyper masculine now to compensate for this here. Now, I don't think there's a lot of men, on the other hand, where it comes to that. Now, I don't think there's a lot of guys out there where they're outrageously masculine, looking to get into a room and open up and cry to other men and talk about their emotions and their problems. However, I do think at times that they may start to mask some of these things with habits and escapisms, whether it's drinking, drug use, using exercise as a tool, and these just become masks. So on the exercise side of things, these are probably things that the Goggins, Jocko, Hormozy side of the spectrum are going to praise: work hard, train hard, sleep less and whatnot. But they'd probably slap you silly if they knew that you're reacting negatively to emotions because you're getting on the bag or drinking all day or sitting there doom scrolling your phone and watching porn, and then you just beat yourself up about it and then again just try to do what they're doing. It becomes a bit of a balancing act between doing the things that you need to do as a man, having self-discipline and respecting yourself enough, having your standards held relatively high based on whatever outcomes that you're striving for in your life, but also embracing some of the things that we can learn from the other party as well. It is normal to have emotions. It is healthy to actually feel these emotions at times, even though it may not be in that very given moment, but just understanding how to notice them, identify them, feel them, articulate them, and not bottle them up or not let them overcome you so that you actually wind up having these escapisms and adverse reactions because you've never learned how to handle your emotions. Final point that I want to discuss a little bit, remembering that these themes are obviously going to come up throughout the podcast. Now, the final point that I want to talk about to finish this off with today is what I realized last year before I kicked off the Daily Discomfort Run Club, is that as a man, you need a set of consistent habits to keep you grounded and to keep you physically, mentally, and emotionally well, no matter what life throws at you. It seems quite minor, but I realized for me at this point last year, it was a breakup. And whilst it was hard initially, I had these habits in place that I never used to in the past, and that's where I'd probably spiral out a bit more. I had my training routine. I had my journaling. I had my breath work. Once I launched the community, I saw the value in community, not even from the point that I was talking about what had went on so much, but just connecting with other guys and other men who have got their own challenges and having that relatability there. And there's other little things in my own little routine that were quite helpful, and things that I've done in the past are quite helpful. You need these habits in your life, and to be honest, a lot of them can just be daily discomforts. Exercising each day, depending on what it is. There's some sessions that I just don't like doing. To be fair, I like running, strength training, not so much anymore. Going to the gym, traveling to the gym is the biggest thing for me if I go do some boxing or Muay Thai. Once I'm there, it's fun. In the past, if I was doing sparring and that, I'd be scared. I wasn't a fighter growing up. These things were all discomfort, right? These were things that I didn't necessarily want to do at first. Getting up in the morning when it's cold in winter and doing the training session that you said you were going to do. Sitting there, doing breath work or some meditation when your thoughts want to go everywhere else, but you have to sit there in stillness. Journaling things down and articulating what's going up in your head, putting it on a piece of paper and analyzing it so you can see that's why I'm reacting this way, or this is me actually working through it. I'm not just blasting some music in my ears or escaping through just doom scrolling on my phone, eating a shit ton of food, doing drugs, smoking, whatever it may be. So that final point is having a consistent routine of habits, which are very likely uncomfortable to do on a daily basis, but you can realistically keep up, that allow you to stay grounded as a man. So we'll explore these concepts a little more in future. However, I think the reflection that I'd like you to take away from this today is, where are you embracing discomfort in your life and where are you avoiding it? Maybe you're the guy that is training hard, you're training for the marathon, you're a martial artist, you're doing MMA, you're doing Muay Thai boxing, whatever it may be, but you're avoiding some trauma that you deep down you should probably attend to at some point in your life. And you tell yourself that your training or you're working hard is your way of dealing with it, but you don't actually seem to be getting anywhere. Maybe this shows up in a certain feeling of numbness or disconnection that you feel within yourself, or your inability to connect with a family member or a partner. On the other hand, maybe you're the guy that's stuck. You've just come out of the breakup, or you're just at that plateau, sticky point in your life where nothing's making a whole lot of sense. Maybe you're getting a little bit nihilistic. You don't feel a lot of passion or motivation to do things. Maybe you do a bit of journaling and breath work, or you listen to podcasts and you're trying to educate and understand yourself more, but you're just not taking action. You're not pushing yourself or looking after yourself with physical exercise. You're not looking after your nutrition when it comes to career or business. You're not putting yourself in those places of discomfort that are actually going to help you to grow. Where are you avoiding the discomfort in your life? Is it physical? If it's mental or emotional, where is it coming from? How long has it been there for? And finally, what can you do about it this week? If it's just one thing that you could start doing this week, write down, is it physical, mental, emotional? Write it down and make that your goal for the week to overcome. We'll wrap up the podcast there for today, guys. I'm sure I've got a lot of editing to do ahead of me. Obviously, want to give you guys a pretty clean podcast. There's going to be a few little points that I've just stuffed up my words, so I'm just going to have to make it a little bit smoother. However, in future, I'd like these episodes to be as raw as possible. Before I leave you today, this is the first podcast episode, so please, if you want to support it and see more in future, make sure that you subscribe it, share it, and give it a review, and just let me know what you think, what could be improved, what you enjoyed about it, and I'll always be looking to make improvements in future. Secondly, if you're someone who's located in Brisbane and you've been wondering about it or you've only just found out about it, I run the Daily Discomfort Run Club down in Newstead every Saturday at 6 a.m. This Saturday, the 4th or 5th of July, I'll actually be down the Gold Coast for the Gold Coast Marathon this weekend, but a couple of the other boys will be running the running component and the breathwork component of that session. So just send me a message on Instagram at Daily Discomfort AU or at Coach Michael Stone, and I can give you more details about the run club. Finally, as I alluded to earlier in the podcast today, I'm going to be opening up more of an online channel to build this Daily Discomfort community with the Daily Discomfort Challenge that is going to be kicking off next month. So towards the end of July, I'm going to be opening that up. More details to come out over the next 2 to 3 weeks on socials. That's all for today, guys. I look forward to the second episode. Next time, I'll just be touching on my origin story a little bit, what got me thinking in this concept of the Daily Discomfort, and what actually led to me starting it after 3 or 4 years, probably holding on to the idea, what actually got the ball rolling so we can have this here now and look forward to the growth of this community and this podcast itself in future. I appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen today. I look forward to putting out more of these episodes in future, and I hope you have a killer week. See yous.